Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to the BGC Book Club. We're back for our very first show of 2024, and I am really, really excited to be here. I've been away for a few weeks. It seems like months, just because I'm so used to being in this space and having the opportunity to share books and wonderful Black women writers with you. So, to be honest, I've missed you as I took a little break to enjoy the holiday season. So if you've been here before and you're back again for another episode, welcome back. And if this is your first time, welcome to this wonderful space. As I said, where we celebrate books that are by, for, and about us. So I'm really excited to be here on MLK Day if you're watching this live, because this is, even being in this space is the realization of a dream for me, as it is for our author who is writing books and just doing the things that she really loves. So it's befitting that we are here to share a little bit of the things that make us tick and that, make our hearts sing. So both of us are actually coming to you from the Atlanta, Georgia area today. Neither one of us are natives, but we'll get into that here in a moment. So if you don't mind, you can join us and let us know where you're joining us from. So yes, so hopefully you all aren't getting a lot of feedback. Sometimes it might be a little bit, but hopefully that'll work itself out. So, but yes, you can let us know where you're joining us from, and then we will go from there. So our special guest this evening is here to discuss this beautiful book. It's The Gardins of Edin. Sometimes I have to move it back to get it out of the light, but The Gardins of Edin by Rosey Lee. Now, Rosey Lee writes hopeful stories about complicated families and complex friendships. As a native of the West Bank of New Orleans, Louisiana, as I mentioned earlier, she lives in Atlanta. Her writing is inspired by the people, traditions, and food that anchor her to the South. She enjoys cooking, listening to live music, and occasional bursts of fanatical bargain shopping. As a child, she dreamed of a career in writing, fashion design, and acting, and she uses the pen name Rosey Lee as she pursues her passion for writing. Her alter ego is actually a physician who has dedicated her career to individual and community-based approaches to health equity. So without any further delay, let's welcome Rosey Lee to the BGC Book Club. Welcome. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, it was so good to have you here. And I have to go ahead and shout her out right now. Lauren Sarand, who brought us together. She is joining us today from Baltimore. And we have Robin Pearson joining us from North Carolina. Jean joining us from Jacksonville. And Jean is also saying she's excited for you. She's already read the book and is loving it. So welcome, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Yes.
All right, I just want to make sure, are you hearing me okay?
I hear you, but I'm hearing everything twice. So it's hard to figure out when you stop because it's still talking. But it's saying
Oh, I am sorry about that. Well, I'll just make sure I slow down to make sure that you're there. So congratulations on your new book. It has been just a little shy of a week.
Yep, almost Tuesday will be a week. So tomorrow. Yes, so
Right.
6 days.
Right, just at 6 days. So is this your first published novel?
It is. So it's exciting. It's my debut. So I am still very much learning the ropes of publishing and getting used to doing interviews. But it's just a conversation. This is a conversation among friends. So I'm very excited to talk.
Absolutely. And that's exactly how I always position it. It's a conversation among friends. So like if we were at one of the Atlanta spots having brunch, that's pretty much what it is. That is pretty much what it is. So I know the story is so rich, and there's several people in the comments who have said they've already had a chance to read it, which is really exciting. So what was it that made you to decide to write The Gardins of Edin?
So, I've always wondered what happened after the stories told in the Bible. And just one day it popped in my head. It was the weirdest thing. I was actually walking in Universal Studios in Florida. I hadn't been doing any devotionals or anything. That just popped in my head. What happened after those stories? And I said, oh, like no one's ever written a book about that. And so I said, that's what I'll do. Now, of course, over I grew up in the church and I'm from the South. So, you go to Sunday school, vacation Bible school, you listen to sermons, all the things. So just hearing these stories about these women of the Bible my entire life, I always wondered, but I didn't think about writing a book until that idea just popped in my head, seemingly randomly, but I don't believe in coincidences. So I think it was a bit of a gift from that.
Right. And for those who haven't had a chance to read it, there are 4 central female characters in the book, and they are named after women in the Bible. I'll let you tell them who those 4 women are.
So we've got Ruth and Naomi from the Old Testament that I put in the same family with Mary and Martha from the New Testament. So it is not doctrinally sound. It is totally fiction in terms of what happened afterwards. But the women have the personality traits of women of the Bible. So if you've ever done any devotions or devotionals, there are several that are all about focused on women of the Bible. And sometimes they'll actually write what the character traits are and what the scriptures are to back it up. And people tend to think, oh, I have the heart of Ruth, or oh, I have the spirit of so and so. And so I just borrowed those things, which made it pretty easy because I didn't have to make it all up myself.
Right. And I love that you took that. That at first it was like as I was reading, I'm like, okay, let me make sure I keep the characters right and who's who. But I love the way that you did that as it fleshes out over the course of the book, because you can see those parallels between the women in the Bible and who's doing what and how those personality traits show up. And, for those who have read the Bible, oftentimes the stories of women kind of get buried in the mix of so many other things. So it's nice to have a book that kind of takes those character traits, takes those women and fleshes it out and what it might look like in, a modern day type of story.
Exactly. And that's the key, that modern day piece. Because, I thought about the conflicts and the issues that women were dealing with, but I thought about what would it be like in modern day. So for example, Ruth, it wasn't unusual that if your husband passed away, that you married one of his family members. But in today's world, especially if it's a wealthy family, people are going to have some questions about how long and why and, all of those things. And so that's what I did with this book. I put them in modern day in a wealthy family. Okay, you froze for a minute, but you're back
now. Okay, yeah, I see it. It came back. I noticed it as well. So sorry about that, everyone. But technology.
Yes, technology.
Yes, but you were saying that the fact of Ruth marrying 2 men within the same family, that was the last thing that I heard.
Yeah, and so, this is a wealthy family. And so the mayor, these are not spoilers. This is the first chapter of the book is available on my website as well as Waterbrook's website. So if you're interested, please read it. But this is a spoiler-free thing. But so Martha is not happy that Ruth has married into her family twice. And so when the book opens up, Ruth's husband, whose name is Beau, because I couldn't call him Beau.
Right. Yeah, that's not. Yeah.
So Beau, Beau, Beau has passed away. And so Ruth has taken over his position as CEO of Gardin Family Enterprises. And Martha is none too happy about that. She's not happy that Ruth is leading this company. So she's jealous of her status in the company, but also her status in the family. As someone who seems to make decisions, but also her status in the community. Now, Ruth is not the matriarch of the family. The matriarch of the family is Naomi, who, just like in the Bible, was her mother-in-law. So Ruth was married to Naomi's son first. That's how she got into the family. But he passed away long before my story picks up. But Martha, knew him and really just is not happy about Ruth's position in the family. And then there's Mary, who's Martha's sister, who really just wants to mind her own business, tend to her new restaurant that she's opened up, which serves delicious comfort food, but with a healthy and it's also plant based. So she just really wants to do that, but Martha keeps pulling her into the family drama. And then Naomi, the matriarch, who I mentioned a minute ago, she is tired of always being the one to hold the family together. And she decides,
Mhm.
I just can't do this anymore. I'm not doing this. You've got to figure out how to get along and how to be a family. But of course, a mess ensues. But I like to call this a family drama with a happy ending. So
Yeah.
that's not spoiling it. My brand is that I write messy family and friendship stories, but things will eventually work out in some way. The question is though, how long will they work out, right? And how will
Right.
people?
Right. I mean that's real, in families. I can think even in my own family,
Mhm,
your family, all families,
mhm.
there can be these different relationships where people, are judgmental of folks,
Yeah.
things that they see someone else doing and they don't always take the time to ask the right questions to
Mhm.
find out what's going on. They just make assumptions. I mean,
Yes.
that happens within families. People get mad, they carry grudges, they snipe at each other, little smart comments. That stuff is real.
It's real, and I appreciate that you brought that up, because I want people to be able to relate to it,
Mm.
to say, I've seen that happen either in my life or my friend or my cousin. This happened. I want these to be relatable stories. And, not all of us live on an estate like the Gardin family does, or nor all of us the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. We can still relate because all families have some type of drama.
All families do. And it's just interesting to see how plays out. But one of the things I also love, the gardens, of course,
Mhm.
everything is kind of a play on words, of
Yes.
Eden. And Eden is a town that was founded by Black people. So talk a little bit about that and how you incorporate that into your story.
Sure. So, I was inspired by cities that were founded by previously enslaved people. So, and I'm not going to try to name all of them because there are many. But for example, Robert Settlement in Indiana, close to where Indianapolis is, and then of course Eatonville in Florida, which is where Zora Hurston was from. I've always been fascinated by those towns, and so I wonder what would have happened if those towns were allowed to thrive. Where would the descendants of these previously enslaved people be? And so I imagined that and I said, you know what? Why couldn't there be this wealthy family who lives on an estate in rural Georgia and they are doing well and they wear designer clothes and they have fabulous parties that people come from Atlanta and all sorts of other places, to this place 30 minutes outside of me. But the reason why I didn't spell Eden the traditional way is because there is actually another town in Georgia called Eden, Georgia, that
Oh,
is close to Savannah. And
okay.
so I didn't want to make anybody in the actual town of Eden mad with me for seeming to change the history of their town.
Hmm.
So what I did was I said that previously enslaved people came from the Savannah area and ended up in this fictional town of Eden. Thinking, frequently there actually are states that have two cities with the same name. And so
Hmm.
I thought, as we know, especially because not all previously enslaved people were able to eat and write, to read and write, it would make sense that perhaps the name was the same, but just spelled a little bit differently. To me, that made it feel more real. And so people could say, oh, that's Eaton, the black town that was founded by previously enslaved people. That just felt real to me. So I went with it.
Right. I love.
Okay. I just lost you, but I'll be patient. I think hopefully you'll come back.
And read stories where that history is at the center, the forefront. And even if it's fictionalized a little bit, we're able
Mhm.
to see things that our people have done, uh, building their own spaces.
Yeah. And what I hope is that it would make people curious about these places, go and learn about that, or even in book club meetings like this, or interviews, or when people hopefully will invite me to ask me, okay, what part is real and what part isn't, so I can go back and dig and or just do it on their own. because most of the history that's presented in this book is real. Just a spin on it, or it's at least based on something.
Right, right. Well, I love that. Another thing that I really loved is that there were very powerful female characters. You know, yes, there was the thing of this business and things like that that they inherited, but they all had their own sense of power in their own way. So, how important was it for you in crafting the stories of Ruth, Naomi, Mary, and Martha to make them these powerful, strong, but yet still flawed women?
Yeah. So for me, that from two places. First of all, when I read about them in the Bible, they are strong and they have things, even if we don't know a lot of what their dialogue was. I mean, just from the small amount that they would discuss, we've been talking about these people for years, my whole life, and certainly lifetime before mine, and learning things from them and trying to know some of their behavior. They were strong in that regard. But also, as I think about our families, most of our families have multiple strong women. In fact, sometimes that's why some of the fighting and disagreements ensue. So I wanted to be able to model that and also to show how the women deal with it, right? Very frequently, especially in a multi-generational story like this, um, people of different generations navigate things differently. And
Right,
sometimes you can really love someone as much as you love Naomi. You know, the Bible says, I'm going to go with you. Your land will be mine, and my people will be your people. But my question was, so why did you leave? Why did you go
right,
back to her family? So again, I made that up. I just wondered that. But then also, when she got there, it doesn't mean that everything was just all peachy keen, right? You know,
right,
she had some issues in this new life, or miss her family, or not get along with all the family. Or like in my book, maybe everyone wasn't so happy that she married Beau.
right,
Maybe there were some other women who wanted Beau. I didn't get into that in my book.
right.
I did wonder that. So just and just made up details to flesh out.
Right, right. And this was good to see that, you know, Ruth as a businesswoman, you know, Naomi as this person who is the leader, kind of the matriarch of the family, who has her own skill set, you know, Mary, who is this great cook or chef or business owner as a restaurateur, and then of course Martha as a physician. So I want to talk about Martha just for a little bit right now, because there is a parallel with you being a physician by trade as well, or as you say, that is your alter ego.
My alter ego, right? I like ego as a physician because Rosey Lee is a good name. So there are now medical schools are state licensure boards who knows Rosey Lee is a physician. So that's why I say it. Um, but so yeah, I really have a lot of insight about the medical world and some things that physicians go through, both in their work lives, but also in their families. And so it was a lot of fun to integrate that into the story. There are themes in the story around cardiovascular health,
Yes.
mental health, and the connection between them, because I don't think we talk about any of those three things enough. You know, heart
Right.
disease is the number one killer in this country. It disproportionately impacts African Americans. And you know, my alter ego does a lot of work around that in her everyday life. So I think it was really important to me to figure out how to be creative about talking to people about health and talking to people about risk factors for health, for heart health or heart disease, as well as what types of things can we do on our own. And so
Right.
people want to get preached to.
Right.
There are a lot of things that we know because we've heard them from our health providers. We've read about them on our own, but things really impact people a lot more when you feel a personal connection, right? You know, time and time again, you know, it'll be the same medical issue that I deal with in my work life, but someone comes in with a personal story and it's like you've never heard it before because the
Mhm.
personal connection really connects with people. As providers, but also just person to person. So it happens to someone you know, you tend to remember, oh, I remember
Right.
that happened to so and so. And so what should I do? Maybe I should do something different. And so I feel like if you can write a story well enough, people connect with it, right? And so they're like, oh, this happened to this character. I won't say which one, because this is a spoiler, but this happened to this character. And when that happened to her, this is what she did. Or when this happened to this person, this is what they did. So I hope that people will have a similar experience and remember some of those things and maybe see themselves or their loved ones in the story and really connect with it. And maybe ask themselves if there's some things they should do differently, or do more, or do less. Or really just even share the book with someone who needs it.
Oh yes, because as I told you before we came on live, that was something that I related to having,
Mhm.
especially the thing of heart disease, having heart disease in my family, losing my dad, to a massive coronary, things like that. So it definitely made me think and about things that we can do, whether it is something as changing a diet,
Yeah.
and how that could make a major difference. And no, it doesn't mean you have to eat grass and sticks all of the time, but that there are changes that you can make, or incorporating more exercise or whatever the case may be, and being able to see that play out in the characters is really an opportunity to learn and to just really think about those things even for myself.
I appreciate that, and really meeting people where they are. Because again, I don't want to be preachy. My alter ego in her work life really tries hard to meet people where they are and not be preachy. So it's the same way for me, in terms of the health lessons in the book, so that they think. This is a book that's really just, it's written for the masses, and I hope people can see some things and learn some things. But I think it's okay to say too, the Gardin family has made some decisions about the way that they eat, and so they talk about that in the book, but they're not preaching about it, and they don't insist that everyone eats the way that they eat. And in fact, they talk a lot about balance, and they have,
Hmm.
and I wonder if everybody would say, oh, I thought this book was about healthy things. Why are there desserts in this book? And most of us like desserts, you know. So they haven't thrown out all their desserts, and so they're still there.
Right, right. So I really appreciate you doing that because, like I said, it's an opportunity to learn and think about some things. And another thing I picked up on, you incorporated some of the tenets of Kwanzaa in the book. See, I caught
Yes,
that. I
I
caught
do.
it.
I do. I do. It's
So
funny. My
that,
brother texted me today, and my brother's reading the book, which just makes me so happy. And so he picked up on that and was really excited that he could pick it out because I don't list the Kwanzaa principles by name.
right,
Um, and so because I didn't want I wanted it to be a book that everyone would just see as being for all times of the year for life.
mm,
Because I think so often people think about the inclusive Saba or the Kwanzaa principles about just being for the week after Christmas, but it's not.
right,
And so this is a family that embraces those principles all throughout the year. And so I remember when I first learned about the principles, he was actually in high school. And so I went to a high school, they really taught them and we studied them. And I thought, well, this is a basis for so many things that I see in our community. We just don't call it that. And
right,
so I was intentional about mentioning the themes, the thoughts behind it, so the Gardin family talks about collective work and
right.
responsibility. They talk about self-determination, because that doesn't make you think about just a particular time of the year. These are principles that are important for community development, and that are essential for all communities to grow, but particularly Black communities.
Yes, yes, and of course, with today being King Day, at the time of this recording, I was out doing some collective work earlier today.
Um,
So, and that is so important. And I'm a firm believer in, cooperative economics and, all of those sorts of things. So it was just good to see that because to be honest, I read a lot and I don't know if I've ever seen anybody just pinpoint that in that way. So, I could appreciate seeing that, especially since we're just on the heels of of Kwanzaa
Yeah.
anyway. So it's fresh. It's still
Mhm,
fresh in the brain. So one of the things in the book that, we talk about, like being in a family, and what does it really even mean to be in a family? Because of
mhm,
course you already mentioned Ruth is in this family, and there are people who don't necessarily like the way she came into the family,
mhm,
and trying to decide, is she really a family member because she married into this family, or is she, like a legitimate quote unquote
mhm,
family member? So
mhm.
talk a little bit about that, and what was, kind of your thought process around having that conflict.
Yeah, so I feel like that's something we see a lot in everyday lives. So first of all, people go through life sometimes with the families they were born into, or they don't make their own family, whether it's because they decide to partner with someone or marry someone, or they may stay single but build a family of friends and other important people in their lives. And sometimes there are conflicts when you navigate through that. And so, you'll have sometimes someone's been in the family for years, but when it comes to making important decisions, they'll be told, "Oh, you're an in-law. This
Mm,
is just for the siblings, or this is just for the blood relatives." When that person has labored with that family, sometimes by leaving their own family. And so just hearing and seeing so many examples of that in life and seeing how people deal with that, I wanted to explore that a bit in the story. To me, it just seemed perfect because, again, I already had a foundation with the story of, with the biblical story of
right.
Naomi and Ruth. And so it was just, I just felt like it was right there. How can I not play around with it?
Yeah, just to think of that, because yeah, like you mentioned, sometimes it's the family you married into, or I always say the family of your choosing.
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
In those relationships that you begin to build. And then, of course, within that, there's the conflict that we see in the context of that, and how people decide to deal with conflict. Do they attack it head on, or they kind of do sideways conflict?
mhm.
Do they speak? Do they not speak? And we see a lot of that play out in the book as well.
And then especially, I think, with this dynamic between Ruth and Naomi, in the Bible, they were so close that Ruth said, I must go with you. And
Mm,
so, again, thinking about the family dynamics that we see so much, but particularly in the South, my thought was, somebody, there's some nieces somewhere for whom Naomi is their favorite aunt. And how are they going to react to this new woman coming in? Yeah, you married into our family, but she's our aunt. It's one thing when I
right.
do you for some holidays, but it's something else when you move on the estate and you're here all the time and you think that you're Naomi's favorite. So
Mhm.
Martha and Mary really did that a lot in the Gardin family as it relates to Ruth and Naomi.
Mhm, mhm.
And doesn't that happen in so many families?
Right. It does,
I
it
want to be
does.
the favorite. No, I'm the favorite. No, I'm the favorite. Right.
Mhm, that's my mama.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yes, and just also looking at sisters, Mary and Martha, because we know in the biblical New Testament story, there is some conflict, where Mary is like sitting at the feet of Jesus and, taking in and gleaning all that Jesus has to offer, where Martha's out running around and figuring out what to do. And, there's that conflict there. And we see it play out in these two characters as
Yeah.
well, how one has one stance on how life should operate, and the other sister does things a bit differently.
Yeah. That biblical, I'm sorry, that biblical story really, it resonates with me every time I read it. It's like I've never read it before because, like, I think it's really easy to say, oh, that Martha, why is she being so mean? Why is she being so fussy? Well, if you think about it from her perspective, she was really serious, I imagine. Here
Mhm.
I am serving. I have the service part, and I am, working to serve Jesus. And you're just sitting here, like, how are you showing that you love him? And I believe she was honest. And so I really thought about, like, what would that look like in today's world? Um, and so again, because of my alter ego's work, it just made sense to me that she could be a physician who really spent a lot of her time dedicated to people, um, but wondering what types of conflicts she might have with that. Um, and so, I'm not saying anything bad about physicians. This is one physician here who
Right.
has some issues that she's working through. But what would that look like compared to her sister Mary, who arguably has some of the same skills that Martha has, right? Because that's why Martha was upset that Mary was just sitting with Jesus and helping her in the kitchen. And because they're sisters, I wonder, do they ever argue over who's
Mhm.
the best at these skills that they share? Certainly, they can recognize that they are not the same person, that they do have different strengths. Um, but I thought, especially in my book with Martha being the older sister, adding in that older sister dynamic, that I think I'm the boss of you and I can tell you um,
Right.
that you could be doing. Because I thought, like, just thinking about that scene in the Bible, yeah, Martha really yell at Mary in front of Jesus, like, who does she think she is? And so, I'm like, do I
Like,
really
girl, you don't get up and get in this kitchen with me.
like, are you looking at her? Jesus, you could have saved that Martha until he left and then read Mary the act. But instead, she said, it, and I thought, what would that personality look like in present day? So I had a lot of fun with that.
Yes, yes. I mean, and there's so much with her because it's like she is like we see some women are this way with it's like she wants to be the woman in charge. She wants to be the one that everybody looks to. She is a social climber, so to
Mhm,
speak.
mhm.
So it's like sometimes she does things that are harmful to her family because she is really self-centered in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and but again, nothing is black and white, right? And no one's black. So it was also playing around, admitting that Martha is the mess that she is, but that there are redeeming qualities. But how do we work through that? Just ladies, it's me the different characters because I had my opinion of them, but I've actually people who don't think all that messy, and I love that. It was shocking to me, but I love
Mhm,
that because it helps to see that people are multidimensional.
mhm,
And the characters should be multidimensional. And there should be something there for everyone, something there for everyone to relate to. Because again, that's what people can relate to. That's how they can receive
mm,
and receive what I hope people will carry with them. Really not just about heart disease, mental health, and but also how to navigate through family conflict.
mhm.
Because part of that mental health piece is navigating through family conflict and how to set boundaries and how to work with people who disrespect your boundaries. So
Right.
those are also themes in the book. And most of us need some help with that
Yes.
because families are complicated and messy.
Right, right. And thank you so much because I was going to get to Mary because I feel all of the characters were good and I enjoyed reading about them. But I feel like Mary's arc was one that really resonated with me
Mm,
because she, was a woman who, dealt with a lot of things personally,
mhm,
dealing with her health, dealing with relationships, and maybe making choices that people are like, well, why would you do that, or why would you believe,
mhm,
that without telling too much of the story. You
mhm.
have to read it if you haven't read it, but just to see her and watch her growth where
Yeah,
and learning how to practice self-care in a multitude of ways, whether it is, deciding what relationships work for her or not, and, setting boundaries within her family as well.
yeah.
So I really love seeing that in her particular story.
I love that. I really appreciate that because I feel like there are people in our families who are labeled. In some way, everyone's labeled somewhere, right? But some of us are happy with our labels. But there's some people who have labels that aren't necessarily necessarily complementary
Right.
and don't reflect the whole story of who they are. And so I played around with that a bit, really with all of the women. Really, particularly because of the secrets that they keep, as well as the truth that they believe about themselves and others. Um, so, and I think we get that a bit sometimes in books with unreliable narrators,
Right.
but that's not this kind of book. But, you do have to ask yourself, okay, like, it wasn't real life where, so many sides to every story. You've
Right.
got to really kind of dig through to see what's really going on.
And it was just like I says, I always love to see that character who maybe starts out one way and that
Mhm,
growth that they
mhm,
experience throughout the course of the book based upon the things that are happening to them and really
mhm,
see that because that's definitely something, we don't have to all be the same way the
right,
whole time. There is room for growth, and there is space to, learn how to set boundaries and learn how to make the choices that are best for you. Because one thing that can often be challenging sometimes in dealing with people, other people sometimes it's like, well, girl, this has been the same thing for the last 20 years.
mhm,
But I love it when people can like really come to a space of understanding and being able to change and grow and those sorts
mhm,
of things. I really love that. And I also love with Naomi because she, of course, in the Bible, it's like there's kind of one thing that she's kind of there for,
mhm.
and the one way that she kind of shows up in the story. But in your, modern day telling of the story, she is a fully fleshed out, mature
Mhm,
woman.
mhm.
So, how important was it for you to do that for her as well, or including that in
I
this
may have
story?
missed a part of your question because of some of the technical stuff going on, but I think I heard it. But just redirect it if I didn't catch it, okay? Um, so for Naomi, I thought a lot about the matriarchs in my family and other families that I know. We frequently see them as one-dimensional, but these are women who had lives, and lived lives, and sometimes are still living lives that we don't know about. And so I said, well, grandma can have some thoughts, or auntie can have some thoughts about things, experience things that we think are reserved for younger people. And so I wanted to play around with that a bit more. The other piece is, when every time I read the biblical story of Ruth and Naomi, I love Naomi because she's a bit of a drama. And so I love playing around with that. I love
Right.
playing around with that. Because the truth is, in their own way, every character in this book is a drama queen, which
Yes.
I love drama. And so, when I was looking for an agent for this book, I actually said that Braxton Family Values was one of my comparable TV shows, along with Queen Sugar and the Pecan Sisters.
Hmm.
I said, people who enjoy Braxton Family Values, this is a family who loves each other, but it's reality TV. So they
Right.
fight and squabble, but they're going to always just be a family. And so for me, that was a part of the inspiration. And I think you see that a lot in the book. But some of the parts were really stressful for me because I'm like, these people, it's a lot. Just even writing it myself. I was like, when do I get it right? But it happens.
Well, that brings up another question though. For you as an author, was it a thing where these characters kind of spoke to you and told you their story, or when you began your process, did you know where it was going, or did it kind of evolve as they spoke to you?
Both. I think about it much in the way that you ask. Sometimes authors get asked if they are a plotter, meaning someone who plans everything out, or a pantser, meaning they just start writing. And I am very solidly in the middle.
Okay.
So what people will call a plant, which is a combination of both of them. So I knew the basic things about what were going to happen in the book, but then I got some ideas along the way, which I think improved the book and made it more exciting, but it also probably changed the ending a little bit.
Okay.
I can't even tell you what the ending would have been before because I just feel like this is just the way it turned out is the way it was supposed to turn out. But yeah, there were some things that came in that um, I'll say this. There's some things that came in that allowed me to think about the series potential for this book. Because and that's probably a great example. When I first started writing this book, I was very much, this is a standalone. I don't understand how people write series. I don't really get it. I don't mind reading them, but yeah, that's not what I'm going to do. But as I wrote this book, I realized, oh, this absolutely has to be a series. And so I'm happy to share that book 2 will come out in spring 2025. At least that's what it's planned. Thank you.
Well, you have a spot here, so just,
thank you.
Lauren, I know she's in here. Make sure we make it happen for the second time for sure. And with you being in Atlanta as well as I, maybe we can do something in person. That would be great.
Oh, that would be lovely. I would love that.
Yes. So that's good to know. But I always wonder about that, when people are writing stories, because I think it was Terry McMillan I heard once say, oh yeah, they talk to me in the middle of the night and tell me, and I go write stuff down because the characters are telling, and you're like, what?
I laugh every time I hear someone say that. My characters don't talk to me like that. I think it's really interesting that happens to people. But my mind is one of those that just kind of keeps going throughout the night. And so if I'm really like thinking about a story and really in it, like lots of people get ideas when their mind's settled. So like I get lots of ideas in the shower. I get ideas on walks. I get ideas like when I'm about to fall asleep. And I've got like ocean sounds playing because I'm resting. And so I wake up like, oh, or like not even really wake up because I'm not quite asleep. And so I get ideas like that. But most of my ideas, I think, come during the writing process. Like I'll see just kind of where the story's going. And because I'm always wondering what and why and what's the motivation, or what if this happened, then I'll get these unexpected ideas during the writing process. But sometimes there are things that I can't figure out that just come to me. So even like when I think about book 2, I knew that something was supposed to happen in book 2. And I was like, it's going to happen. I thought it would happen later. But I couldn't come up with the right way for it to happen. And I've been thinking about it for months, like probably even years at this point. Because I wrote this book in early 2020.
Okay.
2020. So just the other day, it came to me and I'm like, oh, I know. So sometimes I just have to be and just live life. And it'll either just pop in my head, or I'll see something while I'm watching television, or I'm having a conversation with a family member or a friend, and they'll say something and it will trigger something in my brain. It's really interesting. So I don't so much hear from characters. It's almost like a puzzle.
Okay.
And sometimes I find a piece that I didn't have. I'm like, oh, there's that piece over there under the desk. And I'm like, that's the piece I've been needing. So let me move that around. And so it just kind of works.
It's ironic that you said that, because I had a friend in town the other day, and I was showing them how I had about 5 puzzles that I need to put together. And it's the same thing. Like, have you done this? I'm like, well, I started it, but it was hard to figure it out. So I just put it aside. But I love that. So,
but when the time is right, then it comes. And sometimes you're like, how did I look this? Because sometimes the piece is under a desk. Sometimes it's right there the whole time. You just need to turn it around, right?
Yes. Oh, I'm just looking at, from your mouth to God's ears.
That would be lovely.
That would be good.
That's a great idea, Lauren.
That would be really good. I don't know. I have to see what we can make happen over there. So thank you for that, Lauren. But because you do have an alter ego that takes up a lot of your time and your energy and all of that, as a writer, I know you mentioned the pandemic. So were you, that was when you spent a lot of your time writing, or let me see, you didn't say pandemic, but you did say 2020.
I said 2020.
Was that when you had the time to like really dive in, or how do you practice, with having a full-time career versus someone who might be a full-time writer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I heard someone the other day call it writing seasons, and I don't know that I've really heard that phrase before, but I think that's really what I do. I'm always thinking about stories, but I have seasons that I set aside for writing. Now, if I get an idea, I write it down, or I'll email it to myself, or save it in a file, or whatever. But what I did in 2019, I said, you know what, I'm gonna start writing this book I'm going to try to spend December of 2019 planning. So that's when I did a lot of the plotting. But that spilled over a little bit into January. And so what I planned to do, though, was to take the entire month of January. For me, with consulting work, things slow down a bit for the holidays. And so it takes people some time to get geared up. And so I still have work, but I just was smart about how I scheduled it to essentially kind of carve out like almost like a writing fellowship for myself. That's what that was my thought. Like, for me, the inspiration was, I wish I could have a writing fellowship. I could just go somewhere and write. And I thought, self-employed, just create it. And so that's what I did in that month of January. Now, people will say, you had never written a book before and you thought you could write a whole novel in a month. And I'm like, why not? You just try it. And if it doesn't work, then you find more time. So that's what I did. And so I ended up needing the first half of February. So like I scheduled to go on vacation in early February. I wasn't finished. I just brought my laptop with me. This is really great writing at the beach. It's lovely. So that's what I did. But yeah, I wrote so much though that I strained my eyes.
Wow.
And really should have been wearing blue light glasses. But now I wear them. They're here on my booth somewhere. I usually have them, but now it's better enough that I can do this interview without them. But I say that to say, I spend a lot of time at my computer, and so I use the computer a lot, and my alter ego uses the computer a lot. But it was way more time than I would usually spend, and so that's how I strained my eyes. So I just really just hammered it out, and then in the months after that, worked on editing it. But really, the core of the writing of the first draft took place over about 6 months. 6 weeks. Sorry.
6 weeks. Wow. That's pretty.
It still had, like some big holes in it. Probably 2 really big holes and then some smaller holes that I worked with and edited to work on, which was great. Especially because I hadn't written a novel before. It was important to me to work with an editor because I wanted to. So I used a freelance editor. Okay. I knew that because of the faith-based inspiration for this book, that it was going to take a special agent and a special editor to understand this. Because even though, for a lot of people in the world, a lot of people in the U.S., certainly a lot of people in the South, faith is just a regular everyday part of our lives.
Right.
But the truth is, faith-based agents didn't quite get it, and some dual market agents didn't quite get it, because my book was written. My approach was to write book that had a faith-based inspiration, but that was intended for not just Christian readers, but for everyone. And so that's not a new concept. We've got lots of TV shows and books that are exactly that way. But I think perhaps when you take that approach around women of the Bible and it's a Black family and they're wealthy, maybe some people have some questions. I don't know. But eventually it worked out. And I just really believe that this book is fantastic. And there are lots of different people who like it. Not everyone who reads this book are Christian. Not everyone who reads it, not everyone who reads it is Black. I think there's a lot of appeal. And I knew that would be it was just about finding an agent and an editor who understood that. And then for us to find the readers who really just resonate with the story. So I feel like
and it's interesting that you said that, because even though, the whole Garden of Eden, Ruth, Naomi, Mary, and Martha, it has that biblical piece to it, but it didn't read like a traditional Christian novel to me. It was more broad. It is something that anybody could read and not feel like you say, you're being preached to, or, everybody, they're not in church every 5 seconds, or, praying there's a prayer in every chapter, anything like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I believe from the perspective of having more of a mass appeal, that makes a difference.
It's really, and it's not, for me, it's not from a judgmental space. It's really just, as Toni Morrison said, write the book that you want to read. this is the book that I wanted to read, and it's the style of writing that I wanted to read. I wanted to read about people who have strong, but who are imperfect, like me and like so many people in my life. We progress, and so we're just trying to get through, and that's what these characters are. There are in their actions and things more religious. That doesn't challenge the faith that the Gardin. They
Right.
pray, they go to church like people do, but there are lots of people in church.
Absolutely, every last one of them.
But I wrote the books for them, but I think there are people who are maybe more concerned religiously who can still appreciate and embrace the book, and folks who don't have any religion relating families, the book works for them. And so with me and my approach to my faith, that's a dream come true. If those people can enjoy my book, then I feel like I'm doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing. God, put in my heart.
Absolutely. Well, I love that. Now, for those who haven't had a chance to read the book yet, or those who are in the process of reading, what is the biggest takeaway that you want people to get from book one? Because this is just one. What is the biggest thing you would want people to take away?
I think that families are complicated and they may not be perfect. Well, they're not perfect. And it's okay if you don't have a perfect ending, but there is hope. There's hope, and there are tools. There are things that you can do to try to make things right and to try to get along and try to have a great life. And let's just work at it and let's just try to do it.
All right. I love it. I love it. And thank you to everyone who's been here and the questions and the comments. We actually have some other authors in the room, which I love that. Some of whom I've already talked to in the past, some that are forthcoming. So I'm excited about that as well. So y'all get ready.
Thank you, everyone.
And it's just a wonderful conversation, and you all can't really see it, but if you've been following me for any amount of time, I did an unboxing when I received a copy of the book, and this mug is kind of hard to see. Maybe if I move it up against this green, you can see it a little bit better.
Yeah, you can see it really nicely.
But yeah, that is it says the Gardins of Edin, nice green handle. It's such a beautiful packet. There's some peanuts in there's a peanut log in there because the Gardins owned a peanut farm. So what was it that, how did you come up with the idea of creating such a beautiful package to send out to, potential readers? I just thought was
a great question. So I love three things. I love flowers. And so Rosey is a family name. That's why I chose it. It honors my grandmother as well as several other women in my family who have similar names. But also my legal name has a flower meaning with it. So I just love flowers. And so with it being called the Garden of Eden, I thought, hey, I can just really just go all in and obsess about flowers. It aligns with who I am as a person and what I love, but also because this family is wealthy and they are not in your face flashy wealthy, but they like nice things. And so I wanted a box, just being environmentally conscious, really trying to be. I thought, if I make a box that's pretty, then people won't throw it out; they'll keep it. So I just want to get a box that has a magnetic flap that, when you open it, you'll see a floral wreath and the name of the book. And so, I thought, who doesn't love a nice mug, right? But I wanted a mug that looked a little different. That people might say, "Oh, I don't have a mug like that. I want that mug." And then because Naomi in the book brings hibiscus tea, I partnered with Gardin, which is a family-owned, Black-owned tea company here in Atlanta. In Atlanta. And they recommended a fantastic blend that has hibiscus in it. And so they are actually a niece duo, which was a great compliment to the book because of Naomi and her nieces, Mary and Martha. And then, of course, because the family's peanut farmers, I partnered with Stuckey's because they make these fantastic peanut log rolls. And so those are in the box. So it all just came together very, very nicely. It was a labor of love. It was. But I'm really happy with the way it came out. And I'm loved it. And your video was the first one that was posted. So you will forever have
Oh,
in my heart.
wow. Yeah, and I have to bring the book up. I mean, the box, my box is sitting back there. But yes, so if you go on to either IG or Facebook, you will see the video, the unboxing that I did of the beautiful box with the flowers. I'm a flower girl as well. So
Yeah.
as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh! Well, I have to admit the peanut log did not last that long.
Oh my goodness. I told you how many I've eaten over the last few months. Yeah.
So
Oh,
yes,
they're delicious.
yeah, that is exciting. So we are actually right about at time. And thank you so much. I have to shout out Lauren again because we've worked together before, but this is our second time, and I know it won't be the last. So she is such a joy. Thank you, Lauren, for thinking of me and always, bringing me good stuff. So I
Lauren
appreciate
is fantastic. Thank you so much
it.
for having me.
Oh, yes. So as soon as I heard what it was about, and as I mentioned to you offline, I have a connection to Georgia, currently living here, not from here, but have a lot of Georgia connection. I've spent a lot of time driving through the Macon area, which is kind of the part of the state where, your characters are doing some wonderful things. So yeah, I had to dive in, and
Thank you.
it's just perfect on MLK Day because he was from Georgia. So I mean, it's just so much that today was a perfect day to be able to do this and to have this great conversation. So last question, do you have anything forthcoming, any places where people can look for you either online or any type of events that are coming up that people can join you no matter where they are, because people are watching from all over the place here?
Yes. So I am going to be at the Alberton County Public Library on January 21st. And then because I am from the New Orleans area, I will be at the Barnes & Noble on the West Bank on January 27th, as well as on January 26th, I'll be at the fantastic Community Book Center in New Orleans. And then closing it out February 10th, I'll be in Thomasville, Georgia at the book. And then I've got an array of virtual events, so I hope that people will also check those out. It was really important to me to have both in-person and virtual events. So I've got several podcasts. I've got Between the Reads, which is going to be on January 23rd, and then Fearless Authenticity on February 1st. And there are more that we are actually actively booking. As well as tomorrow, in fact, I'll be on Black Authors Matter TV at 8:30. I don't know how I forgot that, but I'll be adding more virtual events. So I hope people will follow me on social media. I'm at Rosey Lee Books. I think to share that, and then also sign up for my newsletter because I'll be also sharing there.
All right. And so as you've been watching, you can see that all of that has been scrolling at the bottom, and you make it so easy for us because everything is Rosey Lee Books. So that makes it much easier. You don't have to figure out which one is which. And then, of course, the website. Oh, Rhonda McKnight, another author, is saying
Thank you so much, Rhonda.
Yes, yes. Oh, well, that's going to be the last question. So the audio book, was there a part that you played in, determining the reader, or how did that process work for you?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Oh, that's no problem. The audio book, was it something that you were able to choose a reader, or how did that
Oh,
work?
sure. So my audiobook is through Penguin Random House Audio because my imprint is a Penguin Random House imprint. So thankfully, PRH Audio was really interested in the book, and so they've got the right. And the producer, who's fantastic, reached out to me with 3 ideas of who she thought would be a good fit for my book. And so we ended up with my first choice. I'm super excited about that. Who's the fantastic, wonderful, magnificent Bonnie Turpin. She's done right. You see why she got all those superlatives to me, right? Yeah, she's fantastic. So I'm super excited to have her. And I'm so excited about my audiobook. And so I'm thankful that Rhonda mentioned that she got it, and I hope that she enjoys it.
I am sure that she will. I know I enjoyed reading it. So, and that is it. But also, if you haven't purchased a copy yet, of course you can get it, in a multitude of places. But I also have the Brown Girl Collective bookstore, which is actually, it goes through Bookshop. So if you
Oh,
go
great.
there, if you just type in Brown Girl Collective bookstore, it will take you to the bookshop space, and your book is there. So as one of the
Thank you,
featured
thank
books.
you, thank you. I appreciate you. And
So,
thank you so much just for all that you are doing to champion wonderful, wonderful books that everyone should read.
absolutely, absolutely. And, as I mentioned earlier, at a time when there are so many people wanting to not tell our stories or twist our stories or, all these sorts of things, I just feel it's really important to have this space. And I thank people like you for being willing to give up your time and come and share with the audience and all of that. So thank you, Rosey. So
Thank
I
you, Marcy. Thank you so much.
welcome. You're welcome. You can just hold on for 1 second, and I'm going to bid everyone else a good evening. But if you hold on for 1 second, so I can say a proper good night to you. All right. So wasn't that wonderful, everyone? I had such a good time speaking with Rosey and just reading her book and being inspired and getting that spiritual piece as well as just seeing stories of real women. And that's what I believe each and every one of you will get from the book if you have an opportunity to read it. So once again, it's The Gardins of Edin. In case you didn't catch it earlier, that's the one, and we hope that you will go ahead and grab a copy of that. Now, by means of announcements, I have been really, really busy bringing up new people that will be coming to us throughout the year. As I think at the end of the year, I said it's going to be more in 2024, and I'm really serious about that and dedicated to it. So there are going to be some new things that I'll actually announce within the next day or so. But in terms of the next two books, we are going to have The House of Plain Truth next week by Donna Hemans. So that's next week, The House of Plain Truth. And then we'll be closing out January with The Queen of Sugar Hill by Rashonda Tate. And I love all the books, but I'm really excited about this one because it is about someone who is one of my sorority sisters, and that is Hattie McDaniel. So it's a fictionalized account of Hattie McDaniel's life. So I'm really looking forward to that, only because of the sorority connection, and that is Sigma Gamma Rho. So just so you know. And shout out to all of the other sorors who are celebrating this month, because I know January belongs to the all of the others except for Sigma Gamma Rho. So congratulations and happy celebration to each and every one of you. So thanks to everyone for, okay, wait a minute. I have to put this up here. Somebody saying, has anyone ever told you look like someone famous? Yeah, me, I'm famous. Thank you, Jean. I appreciate that. And my mama's name is actually Jean. So thank you so much for your comment. And yes, all right. Happy Founders Day to you, Robin, Miss AKA. So with that being said, everyone, have a wonderful evening. And thank you again for your time. Please grab a copy of the book, go out and share it with others, share this conversation with others. If you haven't already subscribed on YouTube, do that, because that's just a great place for you to get tapped into everything that's going on, not just the book club, but Live Well Sister and some other things that will be forthcoming. So thanks again for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon. Take good care. Bye-bye.